The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom may not be the best game on Nintendo Switch. It may not be the best Zelda game, right? It may not be one of the best titles of the year, but it's probably one of the most important because this game has kind of established the difference between like a B team Zelda title and a AAA one, right? Nobody who has played this and Tears of the Kingdom is going to come away thinking that, like, oh, Echoes of Wisdom is way better than Tears of the Kingdom in every way. No, right? Echoes of Wisdom is a unique little title that does a lot of fun, interesting things with the Zelda formula, but it is not a standout title by any means, right? Anybody who has played this or Tears of the Kingdom will tell you that Tears of the Kingdom was way better. If anything, Echoes of Wisdom is kind of a throwback title to classic Game Boy era Zeldas, you know, with a top-down perspective, with the 2D side-scrolling sections, with like the the way the equipment works and the boss designs. Like it's all very reminiscent of that era, right? It is really, really good at being that, right? But when you compare it to what Tears of the Kingdom does, where it has this like vast, sprawling open world, when it has all these things to find and discover, when you realize the shrines are add a lot of content to the game, when you realize just how endlessly entertaining the physics system is, or like the ultra hand mechanics, like Echoes of Wisdom systems feel kind of limited in comparison, right? Again, this is the big takeaway from this, that as good as Echoes of Wisdom is, as much as it probably is one of the best games of the year and very well may be considered a game of the year contender, it is nowhere near on the same level of Tears of the Kingdom. Right. Echoes of Wisdom may be better than Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3, Ghost of Tsushima, Doom Eternal, The Last of Us Part 2. Like, it may be better than every AAA game ever produced, but it's still not as good as Tears of the Kingdom. And that is my big takeaway from this, right? The big thing that really needs to be said, that needs to be screamed out to the rooftops in regard to this, is that The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is absolutely one of the best games ever made. One of the best games in the Zelda franchise and far superior to its direct competitors, right? Like, it is amazing what they managed to accomplish with this game, with its world building, with its story, with its mechanics. Like, we are at the point now where nobody is anywhere close to what Zelda accomplished with that release. And Echoes of Wisdom kind of reaffirms that, where people aren't uh, weaponizing Echoes of Wisdom to go up against Tears of the Kingdom, because like anybody who tries is gonna get wrecked, right? As much fun as Echoes of Wisdom is, Tears of the Kingdom is better, right? Tears of the Kingdom is a masterclass in game design, right? And again, we would have similar results if we put up Super Mario Bros. Wonder against like the games that Pretendos like to venerate, games like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze or Rayman Legends or what have you, Super Mario Bros. 3, right? Mario Wonder is better than all of that, right? Again, Echoes of Wisdom is a really good example as to how Nintendo games keep getting better, right? So even with this massively downgraded release, even with this title and all of its technical issues and its length and how confusing it can be at times, like it is still absolutely a standout title in the Zelda series, right? In spite of not being anywhere near Tears of the Kingdom's level, right? It is still a masterpiece in its own right. And that does need to be talked about, that we can no longer try and pretend as if Zelda is some franchise that gets one entry every 5 to 6 years, disappoints people, and then people just get like excited that maybe the next game will be good, right? No, like again, not only does Nintendo have a AAA team that can put out the core Zelda team that can put out like absolute bangers every release cycle. Going from Ocarina of Time, the best game ever made, to Majora's Mask in 15 months, to Wind Waker, to Twilight Princess, to Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, all masterclass games, right? We're now at the point where the B team at Grezzo is perfectly capable of putting out an absolute banger, right? A game that directly calls back to older Zelda games, because the big cope when it comes to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom success was that, like, oh no, classic Zelda is dead. It's never coming back. Nintendo abandoned us, the fans. And then they put out Echoes of Wisdom, which is very reminiscent of classic Zelda. Again, like, the cope regarding Tears of the Kingdom was never going to stick, right? It was never going to be relevant, right? Like, again, the instant that people start realizing that something was up with game journals around that period, like, do you really think people are going to look at Tears of the Kingdom and then try to say, like, oh, like, I can't play that. That didn't win the Game Awards, Game of the Year award in 2023. Like, nobody's going to do that, right? Tears of the Kingdom is going to remain a highly popular, highly successful title for years to come. To the point where, like, I really do feel that people are really going to underestimate just Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's, like, long-term relevancy. Because I remember when, like, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag came out, and everyone was crying, like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. You get to be a pirate. Like, Assassin's Creed is so back. Ubisoft is on top of their game, and guess what? They never topped that. Right? That was their absolute peak of relevancy. And ever since then, it's been a downward spiral to the point where they become irrelevant, right? The same thing has happened to Bethesda and Sony and, like, all these other companies that were propped up, over the past decade or 20 years or so. Like, they all fall by the wayside while Nintendo reigns supreme. Zelda's at the point where she's getting her own game. Peach has gotten her own game. Like, are you really going to sit there and try to tell me, actually, Crash outsold Mario in the 90s? Like, are you really going to sit there and tell me that Astrobot is going to win Game of the Year 2024? Like, you're really gonna sit there and try to tell me that, like, Jeff Keighley, like, nobody cares about what Jeff Keighley says. That guy tried to prop up Power World, the most obviously plagiarized product on the market, right? Nobody cares about the Game Awards, and yet we're sitting here using game journals as a cope to downplay these Nintendo games. So, like, no longer. Like, this is going to be the beginning of the end, I think, is that we have to keep addressing that games like Echoes of Wisdom absolutely have value, even if they're not on par with the absolute masterclass of games like Tears of the Kingdom.